guys, how's it going? I'm Nick Fagan. I guess I'll give you like a quick kind of synopsis of like everything in the room really quick. A lot of these pieces have to do with relationships and kind of dynamics of certain people in my life that play kind of like a hierarchical role. And well, most pieces do. And other pieces in here have to deal with kind of emotional statuses, dealing with like masculinity, depression, and like kind of schizophrenia maybe in a sense. And then like most of the work you see is pretty like quick movements and actions and kind of like really energetic kind of movements. And so I have a lot of paintings up, and then I have these sculptures. And I guess I'll talk first about the sculpture real quick, because I think it is kind of like the white elephant in the room right now. This is more like this weird piece dealing with kind of inheritance of my grandfather, and all the objects you see here are kind of objects that I just inherited from him. And this whole piece was kind of this whole idea of like ciphering and figuring out kind of like the idea of like why was I given these things and this relationship between me and him, making these kind of non-space kind of areas where the objects sit, and trying to make kind of communications between the certain boxes of where they are. And then there's other objects, like the main, I think, object right here is like this one, where I was given this strange kind of clay bust he made, I think. And I didn't really know, it was like, this is like, he's known for being this kind of industrious man and like very, very like very masculine. And so to him to have this kind of object is kind of like really weird. And I thought that was kind of like a weird kind of cruxus. And so the whole idea of it was basically kind of a conversation between me and him, but me kind of doing the dialogue for both of us and using kind of plasticine as kind of a vocabulary or actual speech between it. So that's why you see kind of like plasticine saying like, all I want you is you to be happy, and I'll try harder with an all. And that's kind of like just like this conversation I think that me and him are trying to have through these objects and through kind of the dialogue through that. And I think like, again, like I think like the paintings kind of reinforce some of those ideas with other people. Like the mother one is a kind of strange relationship between like kind of how I see my real mother in a way. Like this vessel kind of person, and it's like weirdly being broken down and built up again. And really just going through like emotional layers, or like this one having to do with like my father, strangely enough, and then like the masking and not really knowing who he really is, like thinking you get an idea of him through certain images, and then totally just forgetting who he really is. And the other ones I would have to say are dealing more with kind of emotional kind of things. So like this one is like this weird kind of abstraction of like Velma from Scooby-Doo, who that was like my first real erection I can remember from, in a strange way. Like it was really weirdly sexually like charged. So there's like this weird vessel which I kind of relate to like this weird kind of like motherhood type of thing, and like having that erection, or like the football piece and kind of where I was growing up, and this kind of idea of like masculinity as like this pattern in a wallpaper kind of contextualized. And this is more like a self-portrait kind of thing. I see myself kind of as a weird schizophrenic kind of movement maker and weird Garfield type of character. And then finally like this piece, which is like a suicide note I wrote a long time ago, but in a humorous way. And it's just kind of recontextualizing that. But yeah, I guess that's like kind of the basis of all the work. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm really curious about the Garfield painting, because you said that represents yourself. Can you explain more of the connection?
Well, I guess if like some of these, I guess like for a while I was using kind of like archetypal characters through like comics and things like that to like kind of relate to people and myself through organization. And I guess like at the time I was making that, I was like looking at Garfield, and I was actually looking at the I Hate Mondays.
Okay.
Like the original cartoon, and that's where it comes from. The image is like him squirting toothpaste on a toothbrush, and it just says I Hate Mondays on it. And then I was just thinking more and more about it, and thinking just like I'd really just want to make this image and trying to make it myself more. So I started just drawing on it and just like got really into just like myself and seeing more of myself in the society image of Garfield and acting like this painting was like black painting, being like, God damn it. And like yes, but spelled backwards. Like always kind of like fucking up a little bit, but bringing it back. Makes sense.
I'm just curious about are all these objects your grandfather's things as well?
Yeah, so all the objects in the boxes are my grandfather's. And it was one large inheritance I had over the winter. And I guess like the whole idea of the boxes was trying to communicate, like, it was more like trying to like build these kind of equations and figuring out kind of like what are these kind of materials or why he gave them to me, and like what the materials he gave to me represents, like his representation of me of using these materials or giving them materials to me is his representation of me. So like a lot of utilitarian products, and then he gave me like some weird stuffed animals and things like that.
That cat's pretty good.
Yeah, I had a weird cat. But I guess it's like these are kind of like in this area, it's like things that I think that he sees more of me in. And then I was given things that I think like were just like totally he didn't really care for, and more of him in these kind of boxes where it has like his name and his like British Airways card and kind of this object right here that was like really him and not me.
How did because this has like a certain I want to be like, how did you determine these weird shapes? But I think that's what my question is. Like, was that just kind of organic? Did that develop as you were like arranging them, or like where did these shapes?
Yeah, I guess originally it first started out as like these shapes kind of started out as just like putting them together, but more and more I kind of worked at them. They started to come more like different qualities to them, so I think this one is more toonish and kind of like this weird kind of burial and like these like dug out little graves. And this one, I had this whole theory of like I want this one to be taller, a hierarchy in it, because I think like again like a lot of the work has to do with kind of authoritarian people in my life, and I wanted to have like a little bit higher up. So there's like these mountain images and scene images, and I wanted to feel a little bit of race and kind of like give kind of a hierarchy in this object also.
Could you talk about that? The football piece I love, but it also seems like it's the most different out of all of these. There's no sort of direct reference to your hand. There's no text. You have these direct references to collage. How did that come about in all of this work?
Well, I think that was a later, like a bit later. I was working on that one, and it was more getting away from I think kind of like a direct kind of meaning or a sense of meaning through words and language, and more of just trying to get it through image and kind of patterning. And it was more like it was directly just going at it and kind of like intuitively like thinking about pattern and kind of the subject matter and just images all together. And so it kind of just worked its way out, and I thought like it had enough going on in it that it didn't need any language or any signifier in that way, and just leave it as it is, as this kind of like banal wallpaper of like masculinity.
And it looks like the football players are like coming from the 70s.
Yeah, so they're all from like this one book I found actually. And it was like I think it was like players from like 1920 to like 1984, and it was kind of just this it was just kind of a rec list of players in a sense, and there was no real organization. All I knew, I just wanted to keep it kind of in the same kind of like photography canon of like 80s and 70s and stuff, because I felt like those were kind of like I guess it's less important of the time era and more important of just like believing them as just like the characters as they are.
I've got another question for you. I'd like to know more about your working process. It seems like every painting and every sculpture represents something really specific in your life, but the paintings also have a kind of intuitive aesthetic where it looks like you're working on them over time. So do you have more of a clear idea what you want to do, or is it more like figured out in the studio?
It's definitely in the second a lot more. I think I have a strange kind of like an abstract kind of version of what I want to get through, but a lot of the times it's kind of like not knowing exactly, like there's an image of some sort I need to work out, and I know like there's, usually it comes with kind of like archetypal images of like characters and like symbols of some sort, so that's why you see a lot of them in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then after like looking back, I see kind of like what's powerful and then what do I want to take out of that, and I kind of rework it and try to bring out the things that I think need to be brought out. And then kind of take a step back and look even more and kind of figure out like what is it really talking about at that point, because I think I start with a lot of things thinking that I know what I'm doing and kind of like, oh yeah, this is easy, this is fucking great. And then in reality it kind of just keeps on going like farther and farther, and then like I get angry and a lot of emotions come out while working, kind of like it's like this whole kind of situation where like these are so specific to me, because I guess like a lot of emotion goes into each one, where I have like a developed like kind of relationship with each kind of piece, where it's a lot of give and take and kind of like anger and like kind of like sadness and hope and giving it back up. And so there's a lot of layers in that, like saying like screw you and coming back and being like, no, hold on, I need you, and stuff like that, kind of romanticizing that whole idea.
Like when you say romanticizing the whole idea, are you talking about romanticizing these sort of like iconic archetypal figures that you talk about, or like romanticizing the process?
I think
which that works.
I think romanticizing the process more or less. I think like talking about it is kind of like I'm more of talking about kind of like this weird. It's like very, I guess when I talk about it, I think it's like very flowery and poetic, but in reality, it's kind of like very kind of destructive and like therapeutic. It's like very like, it takes a lot out of people in a sense, and like when having a relationship with something, it's not helpful. I think it's just kind of like something you have to do, or like a process to get something farther out of something. And so I think like talking about it is just in a sense romanticizing it.
Because I think like one of the interests I have is these figures that you talk about that are obscure, are these sort of like iconic, like kind of figures that we might know just from sort of pop culture reference. And the ones that don't seem to be sort of activated by your hand as much in terms of like obscuring are the ones that seem to be like more of the self. And I wonder, I'm curious if that's like how conscious that is, or you can talk about a little bit, the level of obscuring between figures in your life and the self.
Yeah, I think it's like harder, definitely, for myself to look myself in the mirror, because I think the realities of that, it's kind of like, I think when you look yourself in the mirror a lot, you don't see what you really want to see, and so you want to see things that you hope to see. Versus when you're like dealing with someone else, you have kind of like a little bit of like space where you can really kind of like think about things and not like really be involved, like not have the person really involved right there. It's like the self is always there, and it's kind of like I don't know, like if I go any farther, I feel like I'm gonna like really kind of get really down or like depressed, or kind of like, god damn, like why am I doing that? As like in these contexts, I can kind of stay away and kind of really think about relationships wise and really kind of abstract that and have like this kind of safety zone of feeling all right with that.
Any other questions for Nick? All right.
Cool. Thank you guys.